Please,
Yeah.
please mute everyone. The host can do it, I think.
Yeah. Yes. Now, yeah. So it was a challenging task for the finance minister to present this budget in this COVID time, and I personally feel that Madam Finance Minister has done a tremendous work to present this kind of budget. According to the Economic Survey 2021, which was tabled by the Finance Minister in the floor of Parliament, the government sees the economy growing at 11% in the financial year 21-22. However, the GDP growth rate is estimated at minus 7.7% for the ongoing fiscal. The annual document by the Finance Minister under the guidance of Chief Economic Advisor V.K. Subramanian provides a summary of the annual economic development across the country during the financial year 2021. It was Madam Finance Minister's third budget speech. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. It was the third budget speech of the Madam Finance Minister in this NDA government led by Honorable Prime Minister. And why this budget was a bit different? Because since independence, this was the first budget which was paperless. It was totally digital. No budget document was printed in this budget. Stock market has given a big salute to this budget. Even top industry leaders have praised this budget. In India, please pay attention. In India, union budget brings too much excitement among all the citizens. But if we see the numbers, only 5%, approximately 5% of the citizens are the only taxpayers. It is a big relief for the taxpayers when Madam Finance Minister says in the floor of the House that she is not imposing any new taxes. Madam Finance Minister says there are no changes in tax rate. But once we go through the fine print of the memorandum or finance bill, then we find that there are approximately 90 amendments in the proposed finance bills. In this budget, the main emphasis was given on the two particular words. One is Atmanirbhar, and second word is faceless. They have given too much importance on these budgets in of the 2 points. I'm now moving to my presentation. I classified all my budget amendments into various categories. So to understand the impact of all the provisions clearly, I will try to cover all the amendments subject to permission of time by the court. And if you have any query related to the provisions, you can type your query in the chat box. I will take all the queries after my presentation. So I will start my presentation with personal taxation. Madam Finance Minister has in the floor of House has said that so for senior citizen, they are bringing some relief for filing of tax returns. But for my understanding, the what they have speak and what was there in the fine print, it is totally different. It is not like that any senior citizen having an age of more than 75 years is not required to file tax return. There are certain conditions. What are those conditions? If that senior citizen is having only pension income and interest income having in the bank account where they have received the pension income. If you have FD income from some other bank account, then this provision will not apply to you. How this mechanism will go into place? If you received pension income as well as bank interest in a particular bank, then the bank will calculate your tax and accordingly file your tax return. Yes, you heard it very right. Your bank will file your tax return in case of senior citizens. But I personally feel that government should give some relaxation, should not restrict should not restrict this only to pension income and interest income. In case of senior citizens, they have their life savings. They have kept in either stock mutual funds or bonds or stock market. So I think there should be some mechanism. If the government really want to provide some relief to the senior citizen, then I think they need to bring some more things to include in this section. So as far as I think this section prima facie gives some benefit to senior citizen, but ultimately I don't know how many senior citizens will get benefited out of it. The next amendment is advanced tax deferment of interest under section 234C. Earlier, as per the existing provision, now if you are received any capital gains, so and if you have not paid your advance tax, so in case of capital gains, what is the provision that when you receive the capital gain, you need to pay tax on capital gain immediately after the month when your installment is due. Like if you have received the capital gain in the month of October and your advance tax installment is next due in December. So in case of capital gains, you were supposed to pay advance tax installment in the month of December, and there were no 234C interest. So government has bring this concept for dividend income also. Next is taxation of proceeds of high premium unit linked insurance policy. Please note down, this is the most controversial topic or most controversial amendment bring in this budget. I personally received lots of queries from my friends, my clients के how it is going to be taxed, कि कैसे होगा, क्या होगा. So and government has very tactfully plug certain loophole while bringing this amendment. What is ULIP? Unit linked insurance policy. It means insurance plus investment. So earlier there was a provision that if your premium amount exceeds 10% of your total capital sum assured, then you will not get tax exemption on the maturity proceeds. Now the government bring the amendment. What is this amendment? This amendment says if you have purchased any ULIP, unit linked insurance policy, on or after 1st February 2021, if your premium payment exceeds 2,50,000 in case of one or more ULIP, then what happened? Then your maturity proceeds will get taxed as capital gain. Now you say that if I buy 2 or 3 policies, so please note in a particular financial year, by a particular person, if you have taken 5 policy or even 1 policy, if aggregate of all the premium of those policy exceeds 2,50,000, then you come under tax net. So how this capital gain will get calculated? So I will explain you. So at the time of maturity proceed, whatever amount you will receive, that will be taken as your sale consideration, and whatever premium you have paid, that will be taken as cost of acquisition. The important thing about this amendment is that at any point of time during your policy tenure, if your premium exceeds 2,50,000, obviously premium payment on or after 1st February 2021. So at any point of time, if it exceeds 2,50,000, then you will get taxed. So if you want to make investment, so you need to split your tax planning in such a way that you can do insurance part separately and investment part separately. Exemption for LTC cash scheme. I think everybody knows about this. So government provides leave travel concession, and due to pandemic, many people due to pandemic there was lockdown. People were not able to venture outside their homes. So, and the block period was financial 2017 to 2021. So, in the month of October or November, finance minister has bring certain things. Okay, even if you are not been able to venture out or you have not been able to travel, but if you have incurred certain expenditure or you have purchased any goods where GST has been levied 12% or more, then you will get exemption of LTC. What is the maximum amount of LTC? It is INR 36,000 per person or 1/3 of above expenditure. Important thing is that you need to incur this expenditure from 12th October 2020 to 31st March 2021. If you have incurred this expenditure, you can claim LT exemption. Next is taxability of interest on various funds where income is exempt under 10 subsection 11, 10 subsection 12. This is again one of the most controversial amendment where lots of hue and cry was there, and there are lots of confusion among salaried class people, persons. So why government has bring this amendment? We need to first understand the logic behind that amendment. Before bringing this amendment, government has made a certain survey, and the result of the survey was strange, very strange. Government find that there is 1,23,000 individuals and their EPF corpus is approximately 62,500 crores. And even there are few individuals who is holding more than 100 crores of corpus, single person, and all the contributions are tax free. So these things were in the mind of government. So what government had did, government has slowly and simultaneously removed these the tax exemptions. There are two components. In case of salaried person, one component is employer contribution to provident fund, and second part is employee contribution to provident fund. What people do earlier, before 2020, lots of senior management, CFO, MDs, or all those big rich people, what they plan to do, they take good amount of salary, 5 crore, 10 crore, 15 crores, and 12%, and the companies contribute 12% of their salary is provident fund, and this amount, whatever amount is contributed in the provident fund, it get tax free. The interest of that amount get tax free. In financial year 2020, government has bring one amendment in last budget to plug these loopholes. Say suppose one of the promoter of the company is getting a salary of say 5 crore. So 12% contribution comes to 60 lakh. So in last budget, government has bring an amendment. Okay, 12% of the 12% of the salary of 7,50,000, whichever is less, will be treated as your contribution, and the balance will get taxed. So in this case, 7,50,000 will become exempt, and remaining 52,50,000 will get taxed as perquisites. This amendment was related to employer contribution to provident fund. Now what happened? in this year, government brings employees contribution to provident fund exceeding 2,50,000. If any employees is contributing any amount exceeding 2,50,000 in a recognized provident fund, then interest amount over and above the interest amount of those contribution will get taxed in your hand. Important point here is that if you have accumulated corpus before that thing, so that corpus will not get taxed. Any contribution made on or after 1st April 2021 by employee towards the provident their recognized provident fund, only in that this amendment will get applicable. And we are government has bring this amendment to plug the loophole in this provision. Now I move to corporate tax amendment related to corporate taxation. One of the
आइए सर, बस सेमिनार चल रहा है, बताइए।
अच्छा सुनिए ना, आपने वो इसका कर दिया
आज
Can you
करता हूँ।
mute everybody?
ना,
yes.
रोशनी का।
वो 1 अप्रैल से कर देंगे।
Sorry. Yes. So one of the most highlighted amendment related to corporate taxation in this budget is depreciation on goodwill. This amendment is going to impact almost all corporate houses. A big time impact will be there. Earlier, what was the provision? In case there is a goodwill in any of the company, either it's a self-generated or goodwill received through mergers, acquisition or any other deals, then you are eligible for depreciation on that goodwill. Although there was no provision in the Section 32 of the Income Tax Act. What happened in the case of a company? That company, due to the mergers, and there was one Supreme Court decision which was reversed by this government to bring this amendment. I'm just giving you a brief how this happened. In case of one company, there was one transaction of mergers and demergers, and that company acquires goodwill. They claim depreciation on goodwill. Assessing officer has disallowed that goodwill, disallowed depreciation on goodwill, and the matter traveled to Bombay High Court. Bombay High Court Chief Justice affirmed that no depreciation shall be allowed on goodwill. The matter traveled to Supreme Court. Supreme Court says that depreciation shall be allowed on this goodwill. But to overrule the provision of this Supreme Court decision, government has bring this amendment. Depreciation on goodwill shall not be allowed. So it will be a big problem for all the corporates who are claiming a huge amount of depreciation on goodwill. The next is bad news for chartered accountant, practicing chartered accountant like me. So government has increased the threshold limit for tax audit. Earlier it was 1 crore. If you are having a turnover of 1 crore, then you are supposed to 1 crore or more, then you are supposed to get your accounts audited, tax audit. Last year it was increased to 5 crore. And in this budget, government has proposed that tax audit limit will be increased to 10 crore. What are the exception? What are the conditions? That you need to do at least 90% of your transaction cashless. If you are able to do that, the 10 crore turnover will get achieved, and you don't need to get your account audited. Next is exemption of TDS on payment of dividend to business trust in whose hand dividend is exempt. So next provision, next amendment is exemption of deduction of TDS on payment of dividend to business trust. Earlier, what was the provision that TDS is required to be deducted on payment of dividend to a resident? So government, in case of a specific business trust, if they bring certain amendments, and what this amendment says, TDS provisions shall not apply to such dividend paid by a special purpose vehicle to a business trust. Next amendment is, again, it is one of the most controversial amendments, or one of the most talked about amendment in this budget. Payment of employee contribution to a fund on or before due date by employer under section 36(1)(5)(a) or 43(b). What was the provision earlier? Like you have deducted provident fund or ESI from your employee's contribution. How this provision works out? I'm giving you an example. Like a company is paying a salary of rupees 10,000 to an employee. That salary is expenditure. Now the company is deducting 12% provident fund from that employee. That is their income. And what was the provision earlier? When they make the payment of this provident fund to the government, to the PF account, then it will be classified as expenditure. Earlier, the provision was that even if you have not make the payment before the due date, like in case of provident fund, the amount need to be paid on or before 15th of next month, or in case of ESI, it's 21st. So earlier the provision was that even if you have missed the due date specified in PF and ESI Act, but you have made the payment on or before the due date of filing of your tax return, then you will allow a deduction. Now this government, now the amendment says that even if you have make a delay of 1 day, then you will not allow deduction of employees' contribution to provident fund. By doing this, there are at least 12 or 13 High Court decisions which says if you are making the payment of this contribution on or before the due date of filing of tax return, then you will allow deduction. So by bringing this amendment, they have overruled all those decisions. And it should be now employer need to be very, very careful regarding statutory dues of the employees, that whatever the situation, they need to make the payment on or before the due date. There is no option left. You need to make the payment by due date. The next is the one term liable to tax, which was not defined earlier. So they have defined the word liable to tax. What this amendment says? This amendment says that if there is tax liability on a person under any law, law in any country, and includes cases where exemption are granted subsequent to imposition of such tax. The next amendment is related to builders. Incentive for affordable rental housing. Real estate in India is facing lots of trouble since last 2-3 years. So government has time to time has bring certain amendments to provide certain relief to real estate developers. So government had bring one amendment. What that in section 80, there was one section 80 IBA. What this section says, the respective builder will get 100% deduction of the profits and gain derived from business of developing and building affordable housing project. If a developer is putting their efforts for developing and building an affordable housing project, they will get exemption of 100% of that profit. Now, what amendment has made due to in this lockdown, the migrant laborers has faced lots of problem. To avoid any such kind of hardship and to support those migrant laborers, government has bring one additional point in this deduction part. What they are saying, if any builder is making any housing project, what is the housing project? Affordable rental housing project. And for this scheme, the central government will notify how the scheme take place. But if that builder provide facility for affordable rental housing project, then what happen? They will get the tax benefit under section 80 IBA. Then the next amendment is again to the builders. There is one section 43 CA, which says that if the builder sells their stock in trade, and if there is a difference between the ready reckoner rate, like if a builder is making the payment, builder is selling a flat, and the cost of that the sale price is that flat is 75 lakh rupees, and the stamp duty rate is 1 crore. So what was the provision earlier? In that scenario, the builder was supposed to pay tax on 25 difference on 25 lakh rupees, and the buyer is also supposed to pay tax on the difference on 25 lakh rupees. So government has there are at many times there are certain difficulties. So government has given earlier they have given a variance if the stamp duty valuation, stamp duty rate and your actual rate, if the deviation is not more than 5%, then you will be allowed to do the transaction. There will be no impact of section 43 CA. Last year, this was increased to 10%, and from this year, this was increased to 20%. To avoid the hardship faced by the builder, they are having lots of unsold inventory, and due to COVID, the market is not good. So also to provide the incentive to the builders, government has increased this limit to from 10% to 20%. Now I move to provisions related to capital gains. There is one important amendment made by the budget. They have changed the definition of slum cell to a certain extent. Earlier, what the act defines, the act, income tax act defines slum cell to mean the transfer of one or more undertaking as a result of sale for lump sum consideration without value being assigned to individual assets and liabilities. Earlier in the definition, sale, exchange, relinquishment, extinguishment words were not there, and lots of people has do lots of tax planning to avoid the taxes. So to curb these kind of things, and there were certain judicial pronouncement also on this issue. So to overcome those decisions, government has bring this amendment. Why this amendment says the slum cell definition will include all type of transfer, including sale, exchange, relinquishment, and extinguishment. Therefore, exchange and other forms of transfer will also cover within the ambit of capital gain tax. Now, this is one of the most important amendments, and lots of chartered accountants do tax planning through this provision. Rationalization of provision of transfer of capital asset to partner on dissolution or reconstitution. Lots of partnership firms do lots of tax planning, and the matter went up to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court has given the decisions in the favor of the SAC, So to plug the loophole, government has bring this amendment. How this amendment works, I'm explaining you by giving the example, which is related to one of the case law. So there was a partnership firm. In that partnership firm, say there were 4 partners, A, B, C, D, and that partnership firm was having a one theater. The cost of the theater was 3 lakh rupees. So what is in your balance sheet? There is an asset of 3 lakh rupees and partners capital of 3 lakh rupees. In the after 10 to 20 years, what they did, yes, sorry, sorry for interruption. So in this example, there were 4 partners and they are having one asset, the cinema theater. What they did after 10 to 20 years, they have revalued the cinema theater. Earlier the cost was 3 lakh rupees. Now they have revalued the cinema theater to 20 crore rupees. And what they did, the difference of the 3 lakh and 20 crore, they have been transferred to the partners capital account. So
सब 2-3 अनम्यूट है ऐसा.
so what happened after the revaluation of the
रेड
asset?
क्रॉस नहीं आ रहा देख.
So what happened to after the revaluation of the assets? The balance sheet size was that partner A 5 crore, partner B 5 crore, partner C 5 crore, partner D 5 crore, and asset is revalued at 20 crore. This is the balance sheet. Now what they did, they bring two new partner E and F. Partner E and partner F brings a share capital of 10 crore each. So after introducing of the share capital, what is the structure of the share capital? Partner A, B, C, D 5 crore each. Partner E and F 10 crore. And what is the in asset side? Cinema theater 20 crore and bank balance 20 crore. What happened next? All the 4 existing partners withdraw 20 crore, 5 crore each lying in their capital balance, and they retire from the partnership firm. So ideally, the revaluation takes place. Partners has bring the amount as revaluation the thing, and nobody get taxed. To plug this loophole, amendment has been proposed. Like your earlier contribution was 75,000, and now you are withdrawing 5 crore. So need to pay tax. Who will pay tax? Partnership firm need to pay tax. In this example, 3 lakh was the original amount and 20 crore is the revaluation amount. So on the difference, the partnership is required to pay tax at 30%. And whatever amount partners withdraw over and above their capital balance, they need to pay tax on this. So by bringing this amendment, government has plugged a very big loophole in the direct tax direct tax provisions. Yeah, next amendment is there was one section 80 IC. So which provides that if you are an eligible startup, then you will get certain tax benefits from the government. This provision was introduced first time in 2016, and the last date for making the for this to fall in this category was April 2021. So due to pandemic, government has now increased this date to 1st April 2022. Again, one amendment related to this eligible startups. There is section 54 GB. What this section says, if you have any capital gain arising on transfer of residential property, if you sell any residential property, and if you have incurred, if you earned certain capital gains, and if you deposit that capital gains for the subscription of equity shares of the eligible startups, which I mentioned earlier, if you do so, then you will get tax benefit under section 54 GB. So what and this benefit was earlier that you need to make the you need to make the investment on or before 31st March 2021. So by this amendment, government has increased this date from 31st March 2021 to 31st March 2022. Now I come to deductions part. So government has, there was one section, section 80EE. This is section was introduced few years ago. What this section says, if you are a first time home buyer, and if you are purchasing a house of a house, the value of house will be 45 lakh or less. And if you have taken a loan for purchasing those house from 1st April 2019 to 31st March 2021, then you will get additional interest benefit of 1,50,000 over and above the 2 lakh that we get in section 24. So the time limit for availment of the loan was earlier, it was 31st March 2021. Now it is extended to 31st March 2022. Now I move to TDS TCS related amendments. Before coming into this thing, I would like to give some facts that out of the total tax, direct tax collections made by the income tax department, a substantial portion of the amount is received through TDS. So to make their collection on a higher side, government has bring the TDS and TCS provisions. Last year, government has bring one provision related to TCS on sale of goods. And believe me, that provision itself is extreme controversial. I've received lots of queries from my clients why these provisions are introduced, and it makes the compliance. Government is saying they are promoting ease of doing business. Believe me, if you read out this TDS section, TCS section, and if you talk to any accountant in a company, then you will find this is not ease of doing business, not at all ease of doing business. The TDS and TCS provisions is making their life hell. Lots of compliances, and there is not very much clarity. Earlier there was TCS provision on sale of goods. Now what they are proposing, TDS provision for purchase of goods. What this provision say, interestingly, what this provision says, if you have purchased any goods from any resident, and overall amount of the goods exceeds 50 lakh in a particular year, then you need to deduct TDS at the rate 0.1%. Yeah, government is saying when your total sales gross receipt or turnover in a business exceeds 10 crore during the last financial year, then only this provision will get applicable in your case. So now you can understand if you are selling goods, you need to deduct TCS. If you are buying goods, you need to deduct TDS. So, and already the GST provisions is there is lots of complications in GST provisions. So I don't know how the accountants or we will cope up with these compliances. And basically these provisions is bring in the statutes to curb the fake invoicing and other things that certain percentage of people are doing. But I personally believe that to curb those 2 or 3% people, government is bringing inconvenience to the rest 96, 97, 98% people. This is a very harsh provision. Again, there is one new section. In case of TDS and TCS, if the corresponding party is not filed their income tax return, then TDS shall be deducted at a higher rate. I don't know. I'm a little bit confused how this provision is going to take place practically. I'm still wondering how these things will do, but the provision is there, and we are expecting some clarity or some procedure part on the side of the government how these things will take place. Yes. There is one section 165A which deals with equalization levy. What this section says, equalization levy is to be levied at the rate 2% of the amount of consideration received or receivable by an e-commerce operator from e-commerce supply or services made or provided or facilitated. What this amendment, what was the amendment in this budget? There are certain clarification proposed in this budget. What the clarification says, if consideration for e-commerce of goods or services are taxable as royalty or fees for technical services, the same shall be excluded for the purview of equalization levy. Any like of the transactions such as placing or acceptance of orders, offers, making online payment for supply of goods or provisions of services shall trigger this levy. Now I move to assessment and procedural part. Assessment and procedural part. Constitution.
Because somebody is asking for 206 BA again. Can you please explain it?
Yeah. Yeah, 206 basically it says that if 206 says that in case of TDS TCS provisions, if the corresponding person has not filed their tax returns, then TDS and TCS provisions, which is 0.1% or some lower rate. So in that case, it will be TDS shall be at higher rate, and the government has not prescribed the procedure how it will take place. So we also still waiting the fine print of these things. Once the government will bring the procedure how this is going practically, how this is going to take place, because I personally feel that there are certain procedural aspects which the government need to deal with to tackle these amendments. So we need to wait the clarification from the government how it is going to how it will take place. Yeah, or any query related to, I will cover up all the queries of all the members at the end of my presentation. Whatever the query of the member, I will take 15-20 minutes to cover all the queries of the members. Yeah, procedural amendment. So first amendment is that earlier there was advance ruling, authority for advance ruling. Earlier there was one board, authority for advance ruling. So what they did, they have replaced the same with board for advance ruling. This new board, all the powers of authority for advance ruling shall vest in this board. And how it is going to work, government has not notified any rules. Government is likely to notify the rules related to board of advance ruling. The next is dispute resolution committee. What this the government has bring one dispute resolution committee. What it says, in case your return income is less than 50 lakh or your aggregate amount of variation is 10 lakh, then instead of going to litigation, you can bring your case to a dispute resolution committee who will amicably hear your case and accordingly clear your case. So, and how it will take place, government will notify how it is going to take place. The rules related to the same will be notified at a later date. I covered this. Income escaping assessment and search cases. This is the very important thing. Earlier, what was the provision? As per section 147 of the Act, Income Tax Department can reopen your case up to 6 years. And in case of serious tax evasion, they can open your case up to 16 years. So now what is the amendment proposed in this budget? Now they say that the time limit of 6 years has been reduced to 3 years. However, in case where it is the government is income tax officer is having evidence that in case there is a tax evasion, concealment of income of more than 50 lakh or more, then this time limit will be 10 years. And for issue of notice, one need to take approval of the the concerned authority before reopening the case. Yeah. Now I coming to search assessment. Earlier there was a provision in case a income tax search case is made in any of the group. So their 6 years assessment gets reopened, and that gets assessed under section 153, which called the block assessment. Like if there is a rate takes place in your company in say in April 2000, in the month of April 2020. So in the block assessment, you will get assessed for financial year 2021 as well as for 6 preceding years. All the assessment will get assessed under section 153A. Now, government has proposed a change. Section 153A, the concept of block assessment is going to abolish. Any search made on or after 1st April 2021, the new amended provision will get applicable. What is the new provision? If any search happen in after 1st April 2021, then your only 3 previous years assessment will get reopened. So government has now given some relaxation in case of raid case. They have given relaxation that only 3 years will get reopened, not 6 years. So it is a welcome provision. So for the ease of doing business. Faceless proceeding. This word is very fancy among nowadays. This word is very fancy among income tax officers and all these things. That in a department, the finance minister is in a hurry to do everything faceless. They don't want to see each other's face. So earlier there was a e-assessment. Now subsequently they have introduced faceless assessment. Recently they have introduced faceless appeal, and now they are proposing that ITAT is also going to be faceless. So I personally believe that government is in a bit hurry to do these things. Even in case of CIT appeals, we have not yet get the opportunity how this is going to function, because how the things will take place. Because I personally believe that you cannot explain everything by writing your written submissions. There are certain advocacy skills, certain oratory skills that you need to explain your case with the appellate authority. If you are able to explain your case properly to the appellate authority, then they will able to understand your case properly, and they will make up their mind regarding your case. If you submit voluminous submission, so it will not be possible for them to understand the things. And thus oral personal hearing is very important in case of appellate proceedings. So government they have in the draft they have written that they will provide, if required, they will provide opportunity of personal hearing, but through video conferencing. So how it is going to take place, how much it is going to be effective, I don't know. I'm just explaining you my one of my personal experience. I have appeared before one of the CIT appeals in Pune. So one block assessment case was in case of one client, block assessment case was there. Block assessment appeal was there. There was appeal of 6 assessment years, and the document voluminous was document was ranging 1000 pages. So I told CIT appeal ma'am, okay ma'am, I come all across Mumbai so for this hearing, so you take up my hearing. So she sees the document, well, no, I'm busy, I will not take the hearing. So I requested the madam, madam, you please grant me 15 minutes, I will explain the entire case, then then you can take up I explained my entire case within 15 minutes to CIT appeal madam, and they have understood my case. I have also given a summary, and based on my presentation, they in the first hearing all the 6 appeals get disposed. So I personally believe that faceless SSC should be allowed a personal opportunity. Either if it is through video conferencing, then also it is okay, but it should be allowed. Next amendment is discontinuation of income tax settlement commission. I think those who are in that those who are in tax department or in practice all know what income tax settlement commission do. They settle the income tax cases, and in which manner they do, I don't want to explain the system. I think everyone they settle the disputes. So what the finance minister understood, what the finance minister thinks, there is no need for settlement commission. So as per the budget provisions, what they said, from 1st February 2021, means immediately after the budget speech, settlement commission is going to discontinue. Like in our country, Modi ji has proposed lockdown from in March, 23rd March, everything will be locked down. So like that, they said, wait, 1st February 2021, now it's you close your office and you go home. Now there is no requirement of settlement commission. Reduction of time limit for completion of assessment. Earlier, the time limit for completion of assessment proceeding was 12 months from the end of the relevant assessment year, which income was assessable. So now this 12-month limit has been reduced to 9 months. What logic government has given? Okay, now everything is faceless, everything is inconvenience. So nobody need so much of time to cater these things. So this is a welcome provision. Rationalization of provisions related to processing of returned income and issue of notice under section 132, 143.2, 143.2 related to scrutiny notice. So what it says, earlier the time limit for issue of intimation under section 143.1 was 1 year from the end of the financial year in which the return was furnished. So this time, this period of 1 year has been reduced to 9 months. And earlier, the time limit for issue of scrutiny notice was 6 months from the end of the financial year in which the return is furnished. So in this case, if you have furnished your return of income on, say, on 31st March 2021, then what will be the time limit for issue of notice? Government has reduced this 6-month period to 3 months. So if you are filed, if your return is filed by 31st March 2021, by 30th June, you will receive a scrutiny notice. So this period, government has reduced this period. Now I coming to provisions related to international taxation. This is one important, interesting amendment bring in by the finance minister. This is related to rationalization of provisions concerning withholding tax payment made to foreign institutional investors. There was one decision of Supreme Court in case of Pilcom. What it relates to? This decision is related to 1996 Cricket World Cup. You all know that Cricket World Cup what takes place in India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. So they have constituted a committee, that Pakistan, India, Lanka committee, and that committee has made certain transactions. So what was the dispute? Dispute in that case was what should be the tax rate while making payment to foreign parties. There were dispute whether they should take the tax rate provided in the act or tax rate provided in a tax treaty, DTAA. The Supreme Court in this case said that okay, you while making the payment, you need to take the tax rate as prescribed with the Income Tax Act. So this has been overruled by bringing this amendment, which says that okay, in case of payment made to FIIs, please note this amendment is only for FIIs. So if you are making the payment to FIIs, then TDS shall be rate prescribed in the respective DTAA, not as per the Income Tax Act. So this is the welcome move. I personally believe this should extend to other parties also. It should not be restricted only to FIIs. Now the amendments related to financial sector. In this budget, the Madam Finance Minister has bring certain amendments related to International Financial Service Center located at Gandhinagar, Gujarat. Government is giving even earlier there were lots of tax exemption in the International Financial Service Center. Now the government is giving few more exemptions to these International Financial Service Center to make it tax friendly and to develop this as a in the likes of Singapore or Hong Kong. What government has proposed here that they had made certain they had introduced certain new sections. What those sections says? In case there are certain fund managers, if they transfer their funds from out of India to a fund located at International Financial Service Center, then they will get tax relief. They had also made one amendment related to, like, if any setup has made related to aircraft leasing. Say if a company, if a setup is made in IFSC unit, and that unit is in the business of aircraft leasing, then they will get 100% tax deduction on the profits what they've earned. These provisions basically introduced to make this International Financial Service Center more attractive among the developed regions. Again, the government has rationalized certain provisions related to sovereign wealth fund and pension fund. What was the earlier provision says? The provision says that annual receipt received by any person on behalf of I'm now moving to the other amendments. I think we can keep those amendments. Yeah, there is one important amendment government has bring related to charitable institutions. Earlier, what was the provision? If any annual receipts received by any person on behalf of university or educational institutions, if they have received, if their gross receipts does not exceed 1 crore, then that was exempt from income. So government has increased this limit to from 1 crore to 5 crore. If that if there is certain educational institutions or hospitals, so their aggregate receipt will be exempt from tax. What they need to do, they need to file their return of income. If they file their return of income, then I think then it will be exempt from tax. Rationalization of provisions related to charitable trust and institutions to eliminate possibility of double deductions while calculating application of accumulated income. Government has rationalized certain provisions ke how the corpus amount received by a child institution will be utilized. Earlier, there was certain lacuna in the law, so government has bring certain clarifications. And now, after that clarifications, what they said, corporate donation exempted only if invested or deposited as per the prescribed modes. Excess application of income of earlier years not eligible for set off in calculating exempt income of current year. Utilization of loans and borrowings will not be allowed as application for charitable or religious purpose. Yeah, and now I'm coming to my last slide. Provisional attachment in fake invoice case. Government is very concerned that lots of people are doing fake invoicing, so government has proposed very strict penal provisions. As per those penal, what are those penal provisions says, if they find if anyone is indulged in fake invoicing case, then they can provisionally attach your property. Earlier, this provision was there only when the when the assessing officer was of the view that tax liability has been escaped. Now government has bring this amendment. Tax authority can provisionally attach property of the taxpayer if they find if any company has made false entry in their books of accounts or omit certain entries, then they can provisionally attach your assets. However, penalty imposable is likely to exceed 2 crore. Okay, so with this I come to conclusion of my this session. I hope I'm able to clear all the queries. If you have any queries, I will address all those queries.
I think now we can move to the indirect tax.
I think because there is some questions on chat, if you just see if everything
Yes,
is
yes,
answered,
yes.
then
Let me see. Pankaj sir is asking one question. This is residential housing project. Yeah. Rental housing, it is for residential, sir. It is not for commercial. Rental housing, it is for residential. You are right. And Mr. Sandeep Garg had asked a question. Does it mean that we have to take acknowledgement of filing return of IT where one has to deduct TDS? Sir, I personally don't know what is going to what is the mode through which this provision going to take place. I am also in the dark like you. We are expecting certain clarification from the side of the government, and once the relevant rules will be notified by the government, then only we can able to say what how it can be take place.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just a thing because there is no other way. As a person will know about that whether he has deposited filing return or not unless he gives us the acknowledgement. This is a similar kind of thing where we take a cross-check copy for their bank account
Yes,
verification.
yes,
So
yes.
let us wait for the rules to come.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. Hardik has raised one question. Explain 80 IB for rental housing, how it works. Hardik, actually, government is yet to notify the relevant rules for rental housing. As per the memorandum explaining finance bill, they said the rules will be notified as a later date. So we need to wait for the relevant rules from the side of the government. Once we will receive once those rules get notified, then only we will able to understand how this thing is going to take place. I think there is no other questions. If you have any other questions, you can ask me. There is no other question in the chat.
Yeah, there's one question. This is Vijendra. Can
Yes,
you hear
sir.
me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Especially with regards to TDS reduction on purchases. I mean, I
Yes,
think the
yes.
threshold limit, what you just said, was 50 lakh rupees.
Yes,
Like
yes,
if
yes.
you are buying with, and this is applicable from 1st July 2021 onward.
July 2021. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And regarding this also,
Whether there is also an application of 40A1 in this case as a failure to deduct TDS.
sir, your voice is cracking.
Sir, my question is whether there will be any penal consequences by virtue of section 40A1A where you don't deduct TDS and the 30% of the expenditure get disallowed. Whether it will be, whether that mischievous section will come here also, sir?
Yes, yes, yes. You can expect those sections, all the kind of penal provisions like here. You can expect any kind of all the penal provisions will attract. And government is we need to wait for more clarification regarding this thing. I think the penal regarding your point 40A1 will applicable or not. The memorandum explaining filings bill is not explaining the same, but we are expecting whatever is missed out in the memorandum or in the finance bill, they will cover up in the once the bill get passed, they will cover up all these things in the final act.
Okay.
Yes, any other question?
Okay, I think we can move ahead. And thanks, Vikas, for the wonderful session that you had. And anybody who has more queries about budget or any queries on direct taxation in any matter, you can reach out to Vikas. I'm sure he can solve all the problems in terms
Yes,
of
yes, definitely,
direct
definitely.
taxation. So, moving on, our second speaker for today is Mr. Narendra Pati. He is also a part of Gitanjali Express. He is a chartered accountant with more than 25 years of indirect experience in corporates as well as consulting. He has expertise in GST, excise, customs, service tax, VAT, FTP, and other state levies, including matters related to DRI, DGCI, special audit, and others. He is a member of Indirect Tax Committee of Indian Merchant Chambers, WIRC, and have published numerous articles of various journals, including Tax Planning International by Bloomberg, Excise Law Times, Business Today, Tax India Online, Lexology, Journals of Chambers of Tax Consultants, and others. He has also addressed various seminars organized by ASSOCHAM, PhD Chamber of Commerce, Delhi, Infrastructure, Edge, IMC, ICAI, and uh, ICWAI. So, a very warm welcome to Narendra Pati, and I'm sure you will love the session. Over to you, Narendra.
Thank you, Pankaj. Welcome, everyone. Very good afternoon to all of you. I'll start with a verses from the Bhagavad Gita. Dehinomsmin yatha dehe kauramam jauvanam jara tatha dehantar prakti dhiras tatra na muhyati. Here, Lord Krishna is explaining the transmigration of the soul, lifetime from the childhood to the adulthood, then to the old age. He also explains that the life also changes after the old age to a new body. The most important what I want to read is the last three words. Dhiras tatra na muyati. Means the wise man doesn't get deluded, doesn't get worried. The changes keep happening. So this very much applies to the GST law. We have seen the transformations, huge transformation. In fact, the biggest change that has ever happened in such a big countries. The implementation has taken a little bit of time. It has created stir and instability, but it is achieving its purpose. The purpose it was designed for. So with this, I'll go to the budget provisions. We should not get worried. There are many changes, but yes, it is all the goals towards the indirect tax. If you see, this photo also has been chosen by me very considerably. The hand that shows that it looks like it is breaking the chain. This is a Sandwich chain. In indirect tax, the Sandwich chain, the tax chain is very important. Means the tax we pay should get credited when it again when the goods or services traded or transferred from one place to another, so that there is no cascading effect, and there is only one levy on the full value at the end of the product. So we call it cascading effect. If there is any breaking of the chain, means you don't get credit. And every chain in a VAT, this is called the value added tax systems, where every activities of value addition is supposed to get taxed. That is the primary things. And earlier there was many laws, so those I'm not going into background. Now straight I'll go into the budget provisions, where I'll in 7 portions I will explain the what has come in the budget. Not many changes has come in the GST. Mostly in and around 16s, but there are some very draconian provisions also, and there are some very high important provisions where it needs attention from all of us. So when we go into the restriction of ITC, this is covered under section 16 of CGST. Here there has been restrictions on the input tax credit. There is a new restriction that has been brought in. So yeah, if we all know, I know I'm speaking to a online gathering. So you, many of you may be knowing that in October 2000, earlier the settlement credit was, the input tax credit was available for all your goods and services. Of course, with some restrictions. But there was a matching concept also, that the vendors who upload their data, it comes into the GST portal, and it should be it is visible, and it can be compared with you. But the restrictions were not there. It was only a information. In October 2019, the provisions first time it was brought, the 36(4) rule. We say that you will be eligible to get credit of the credit that is matching plus 20% additional you are eligible. So there are many complications in the calculation. I am not going into this. That was again amended in January 2020, saying that this credit will be eligible instead of 20, now it is 10%. So recently in January, this was again changed to, from this January, it is now 5%. Now, this has been, now the restriction has been further stringent, made it more stringent in the budget provisions, which says that it has to be zero. Means every credit you are taking has to be, there are two conditions they have put, that it should be, the vendor should have uploaded the invoice, and also it should communicate you. See the second paragraph. The first is input can be taken, claim by after it is matching. The second is a very funny thing, communicated to the recipient. Means the vendor who is selling goods and services to you, not simply file his GSTR1, means the invoice number and other things, there are some list. And also it should be communicated to you. Communications looks quite irrelevant, but it is important to mention that in the GST portal, now there is a facility where the recipient of goods or services or the supplier can talk to its customers. So I don't know whether it is linked to that or not, but recently, last 2 to 3 months, this facility has been enabled where you can talk to your recipient of goods. So this is one. Now, after this amendment, where you have nothing else to do and you have to only take credit of the amount that is appearing in your GSTR 2A and GSTR 2A. Now, first of all, it makes the rule 36(4) completely redundant. It also makes GSTR 2A and 2B completely redundant. The 2A, 2B, I will just else maybe some of the people may not be handling GST, may not know. 2A is a credit. 2A is the list of invoices that the vendor uploads and the recipient is able to see. But this is a dynamic one. This today you have taken a upload, and tomorrow you see if one of your vendor has again uploaded something, so it will change. Whereas GSTR 2B, they made it a static one, so that you can use this for your return filing. I'm not going into again in depth, but all this concept, which is taken so much of time of the government, of the people, of the IT department of the companies, or even the IT service providers, everything becomes redundant. Of course, it is important to mention that these sections now overrule Arise India. This was, of course, a Supreme Court in the old regime judgments. But again, even recently also, when the restriction was there for 20%, 10%, and 5%, many people went to High Courts, and High Court has given notices to the LG. There are few High Court matters I have mentioned: LGW Industries, Bharti Airtel, Celtex Bar Associations. So these are few of the judgments where the government was in trouble. So now they have overruled everything and they have brought in the section so that no complaint will come. Earlier it was through a subordination legislation. So there could be some question asked. The parliament is supreme in this country. So now all this put to rest. Now again, what Vikas earlier mentioned in direct tax, that the audit has been now the scope has been reduced in direct tax, but in case of GST, it has been completely removed. GST audit. Yes, there is section 44 that has been brought in, and the 44 sections tells that the persons has to file a self-certified return. It is very now makes it easy life of all the corporates, also for the consultant, because we have been spending unreasonable time because of technical glitches. Still, for the corporates, it's important to remember that this 9C is a document that will be required, 9C reconciliations. 9C, GSTR 9C is the GST audit report, and which is a reconciliation between the your taxable income, taxable supplies versus the audited balance sheet revenues. So that will be anyway required by the government audit when it comes, and even otherwise also. The corporate should do a due diligence every month. They should do this exercise. And if it is done internally by your team, I am very skeptical about this agency that they may not do a good job, or some people try to swaddle it up and put it on the carpet for many things. And this will be detrimental for the corporates in their future endeavors. When the final assessment or some dispute comes after few years, 4 to 5 years, at the time it will be again has to be done. So one should be very careful. Maybe seek a professional certifications, even though it is not required by the government. Now there is a amendment to section 50. Section 50 is the sections where interest liability is mandated for delay payment of taxes. Delay in GST, there are two ways of payment that happens. One is it happens through out of your credit, and second it is case. So there are a lot of dispute on this, that whether when your credit is lying and you're not paying in credit, but paying out of credit only because your return filing date is you have skipped the return filing date and you are reporting the element a little late. Government is to charge interest. First of all, E2A notification came in 1st September 2020. Notification came in August 25, stating that this will be applicable from the no GST interest will be payable only on the net payment, not on the gross payment, meaning that your payment out of credit will not be chargeable to interest. But that was made applicable effective 1st September 2002. Then they came out with a press release. A lot of hue and cry happened in the market. So immediately next day they came with a press release stating that no coercive action will be taken for interest recovery even for the prior period. So that was a by media, but it was not in the law. So now the government has codified this. Now they got in the sections telling that now interest liability only be on the cash component of payment, not on the credit. This actually overrules one this Telangana High Court judgments, Mega Engineering. It was already disputed, and the ruling was against the government. So this settles some disputes. And this is a provisions which affect many of us, because on the society we stay, or even many associations we are part of that. When there were allegations of the services being rendered by the association to its member. So there are many questions asked. In the VAT time, it is from the VAT time only. So West Bengal, it happens in a High Court Supreme Court judgment in the matter of Kolkata Club, where it was the principle of mutuality, the doctrine of mutuality was brought into the concept, was accepted by the Supreme Court and said that there will be no tax when some goods are supplied by the association to its members, because it is a supply to self. That was on the Batida. In the GST, this piece of the law that associations supplying to its members, including goods and services, both will be taxable, was written in a schedules. It was not in the law. So it was only in the schedules. Many people disputed it. But yes, there were many, at least 5-6 I have mentioned here. Few of them are Rotary Club. These are all advance ruling. It was referred to advance ruling. In the few cases, the advance ruling came in favor of the SSC, and few other cases in favor of the department, like Rotary Club, Lions Club, Apsara Cooperative Society, all these places. The advance ruling followed the Calcutta Club maturity concept and said that it will not be taxable. Whereas in other cases like Association of Inner Wheels and Bengal Rowing Club, it was told that it will be taxable. So putting all this to rest, now government has brought it into the middle of the into the main provisions of the act, so that nobody can dispute the parliament passed act. So all services rendered by association to its members, whether it is goods and services, will be taxable. And this is from retrospective from 1st July 2007. Now, this is a little technical that there was two in GST. There are two penal provisions. One is for seizure, confiscation of goods and conveyances in transit. Second is the seizure of the goods. Now, what has been done now is in the provision there are four changes. We should read it together. 73, 74, 129, and 130. Now, the conclusion is now this seizure and confiscation of goods will be dealt with separately from the recovery of tax. See, one is the seizure and confiscation of goods and conveyance is mostly against the transporter, and recovery of the tax is against the supplier. Like you are supplying a goods. Now, suppose that it is going from one place to another without a cover of the invoice or without the cover of a UA bill, then suppose it is caught in between, then there will be a tax recovery notice to the owner of the goods, that is the supplier. But simultaneously, there will be a seizure, confiscation of goods, and also the conveyance, the vehicle it is moving on. So this is also a proceeding will happen under section 70. Now the law has been amended saying that these two will run simultaneously and separately. So it is not that, so it means what? That suppose the tax recovery proceedings went into appeal or adjudication, it was closed by the supplier of the goods. But the case against the conveyance, seizure and confiscation of goods and conveyance now will also have to be fought in a court separately. Just because the tax has been paid by the supplier, it doesn't mean the other case is closed. That is all important of these changes. It affirms one synergy, one Gujarat High Court decisions, where it was held that seizures will, they are all separate provision. It is to simultaneously run. It cannot be combined together. So, this also has been closed by the government. Now, this is a very general provisions for SEZs. As we all know, SEZ is a place where government offers incentive of taxes. Basically, the SEZ Act says that it will be no tax on supply of goods and services within that. But suppose somebody is supplying goods to the SEZ, it is called zero rated, and this come under section 16 of IGST, not CGST. And now, till today, all supplies to SEZ were exempt, but not henceforth. After this budget passes the act, this will be only for the authorized operations. People who are aware of the SEZ's provisions, regulations, they will be aware of what is authorized operations, and which are the main activities, which covers the main activities of the SEZ unit or developer. So only for those there will be no tax, and other for all the non-authorized operations it will be taxed. This was Also the case in service tax. Prior to GST, it was like this. In GST, it was a little more liberal, but now governments, I don't know, with the revenue mind or something, they have changed the law. Now there are 2-3 more changes in section 16 of IGST, the same zero rated. So one very important is in almost all indirect tax provisions still today, for sale of services to qualify as export, it was always the receipt of money in foreign exchange was a condition. But for supply of goods, it was the condition was that the goods should move out of India. But this time, government has put one more restrictions for zero-rated supplies. They have told that for any refund, if you are claiming for zero-rated supply of goods, then you should also receive the sales proceeds. And the sales proceeds should be received within the time as permitted by FEMA, that is 9 months from the date of supply. So if you don't realize the time, then you have to deposit the tax that exemption that was given by supplying zero rated. You have to pay the deposit the amount along with interest at the rate of 18% within 30 days. So now change to this reference is, this change was already there. And already there under a rule 96B. This came on 23rd of March, but it came in a rule. And there was no provision, so people complained about the ultra virus nature of this rule. Now again, government has not this rule. Export of goods on payment of IGST. People who are supplying to foreign countries goods and services, they are aware that one can supply the goods and services even if it is export on payment of IGST and claim refund of the IGST. So that was available to all the people. Now government has put a restriction. What restriction is that this can be put only it will be allowed only for notified class of persons and also notified class of suppliers. So now we are yet to see the notifications, but it is now restricted. It is now everybody, if there was a accumulated credit, everybody used to charge IGST and take credit. Now this will not happen. It is quite restricted. Now there is a change under Miscellaneous Act, Section 75 of IGST. The self-assessment tax has been defined to include tax payable on outward furnish under Section 37, not include Section 33. I should let me give a background to it. Under GST, there are two monthly returns to be filed. I'm talking of general outward supply. One returns that is called GSTR1, which is to be filed on, on 11th of the subsequent month. It is to be filed on 11th of the subsequent month. It contains all the list of supplies. So now let me repeat. So in GST, there are two returns, monthly return for outward supply. First one is called GSTR1, where the list of invoices are filed with the author. And second, a summary goes along with the credit and the tax is paid. That is called GSTR3B, which is filed on 20th of the month. So many times it happens that there is a difference between the outward supplies reported in GSTR1 and GSTR3B. There was no so the final one actually was GSTR3B, on which the tax was paid. But GSTR 1 was the list of invoices on which the other party, the buyers, used to get credit. So any mismatch, government was losing revenue, and it was there was a need to concretize, close this loop. So now they have told that self-assessment tax will include the outward supply as part of the GSTR reported in GSTR 1 also. It means any error you do or any invoice you have reported in GSTR 1, you are supposed to pay tax. If you have not paid tax, then there will be recovery proceeding will cover that portions also under section 79. And for your information, this recovery proceedings can be without issuance of a show cause notice. And there are also provisions to cancel registration under 21. So now one has to be very careful in filing GSTR 1. My experience of many prestigious corporate houses is that most of the times there are discrepancies between GSTR 1 and 3. One has to be now very careful, otherwise there could be a recovery proceedings without. Another legislative change under section 83. Here, it is very important. Normally, under any tax law for recovery, there is a power in the tax authorities for attaching the properties. Yes, it was there in CGST, but it was restrictive. Now they have changed it, make it the scope has been made too wide. Now they have told that the commissioner can attach the property provisionally belonging to any persons as specified in section, any persons. That is very important. Specified in sections 122 1A. Section 122 1A list out few conditions, and they are any person who retain the benefit of a transaction and at whose instance such transactions is conducted. So I even wonder whether this can come into the CFO's personal liability or the tax heads or even the logistic head or even a consultant. If any person who retain the benefit of a transaction, I don't know how they can interpret it. So, but it is quite draconian law. So it can cover many people other than the company. One is to be very careful. And also it is important to note that earlier only in cases of specific scenario the provisional attachment was there. Assessment of non-filers if you are not filing a return, if you are not registered. So if there was something wrong and found out on an inspection procedure. But now this is quite enlarged. It covers any other cases. And this again, it is changes is as per and one more important thing is this attachment provision order will remain effective for 1 year. This 1 year was confirmed by High Court of Allahabad. They said that the provisional attachment, if the order is there, it will be stable and valid at least till a reasonable time of 1 year. So that 1 year period now government is put it inside the law. Now 107, this is also very important provisions for detention and detention seizure of conveyance. Now they say the normally the appeal, when you go for appeal against one order, generally there is a 10% of pre-deposit. Now they have inserted one says that appeal against under section 123 129(3) the pre-deposit will be 25% of the penalty. So this is a case where the detention and seizure of the conveyance happens. So, and the below point also very important way to read it together. Here it says appeal filing, 25% penalty has to be deposited before filing an appeal. And the penalty is how much? Penalty is 200% of the tax payable on the goods detained when the supplier come forward on its own. If he is ready to pay immediately, then it is 200% of the tax payable. So out of 200, the penalty is 200% of the tax payable. So out of that, you have to pay at least 25% of the tax of the penalty. So the penalty has to be minimum 50% of the tax payable. In other cases, even the penalty is much higher. In other cases, when the supplier doesn't come forward, the higher penalty equivalent to 50% of the value of the goods or 200% of the taxes. So whichever is higher. So one is to be now very, very careful when the goods are moving, and more important also that provisionally release of goods system has been deleted. So once it is detained anywhere, then the goods will not be released on a provisional basis. So you have to pay taxes, you have to pay penalties, and issue the government will the tax officer will issue an order within 50 days of such detention. So any goods getting detained anywhere, immediate action should be taken by the corporate houses because you have hardly 15 days. Otherwise, he will issue an order, and once the order is there, then it means you have to go to appeal. Appeal, there is a huge pre-deposit to be made. Transporter has an option to get his conveyance release on payment of penalty or 1 lakh, whichever is less. So there is a options available to him only to the transporter. Also, power to sell, dispose of the seized goods and conveyance also has been now entrusted to the commissioner. This we discussed section 130 and 129 that there will be separate provisions, and now penalty for means there are two different proceedings. One is confiscation of goods and conveyance and labor penalty, another is detention, seizure, and release of goods. Now, so it is almost, I think this 130 is like income tax where the assessment and penalty provisions run simultaneously. In indirect tax, it was not the case. So slowly they are bringing into this. Now section 159 is very important that now under any law like 133 income tax, also the officer has the power to call for the information. Under GST, the power was restricted to collecting statistics. So they could, the authorized officer could call for information, not information, call for statistical data. So it was not a evidence to be used against the persons. Now here it has been changed. The power has been now made to collect information. It means the information will be used against the supplier or the taxpayers. So one is to be now very careful. As we can see from the old excise era of physical control, government has moved to a self-assessment basis. So the consequently, they are also making the penalty provisions, penal provision very stringent, very draconian. Just to be very careful on this, that they can take third-party information also and can use against the taxpaying, which was not the case before. No, yes, because now the information will be used against the supplier. Now there is a provision also has been inserted under section 152 to give a personality because the information will be used against it, not like the earlier times. I have made it. I have kept it short and sweet. I'll be happy to share any questions. Is there any question?
And there is one question, I think.
Look at that. Where it is, let me see. Pankaj, how do I see the question chart?
I'll read it out to you. The question is, will housing society
Please.
monthly charges to its member become applicable to GST?
No, there is a, it is already applicable, it is already taxable. There is an exemption up to 7,500 per month.
If anybody any more questions, they can unmute themselves and ask the question. Okay. Thanks very much, Narendra, to take out his time and explain us a bit of budget provisions on indirect taxation. And I'm sure I have dealt Narendra personally. I'm sure he can take up any other queries you may have beyond budget also on indirect taxation. You can connect him personally also. So we'll conclude the session today. One more time, thanks Narendra and Vikas for the taking out time for us.
Thank you. We all should thank each other. It is, as we know, this is Gitanjali is our own team only. So it is like talking to our own team. Yeah, thanks, Pankaj, for coordinating all these activities. Thanks, Vikas.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye bye everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.